Hi there, and welcome to episode 83 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. My guest in this edition is the well-known music journalist and DJ Jana Kománková, who's just brought out a book about one of Czechia's greatest radio stations, Prague's Radio 1, or Radio 1. Set up by eager but wholly inexperienced young music fans, it was the first non-state station in Czechoslovakia after the fall of communism, and is still going strong all these decades later. And I'm sure many listeners will learn a lot about the station, as I did, from Radio 1 Life in the Ether, which has just been published in recent weeks. So here's me talking to author and DJ Jana Kománková for this edition of Prague Talk. What is your own association with the station? When did you first start working for Radio 1?
I started in 1993. I was working for a music magazine that had like a guest show each week on radio, and I was really happy to be able to go there. I think the others were sort of tired of going to radio, so they happily let me go. And so once I was in, I sort of got some shifts to cover somebody else's shift, and then I just stayed.
So if we could rewind a little bit before your start at the station, when was it first set up? It was the first ever non-state radio station in Prague after the fall of communism.
It began in 1990, and first it was a pirate station, because it was a bunch of students who got hold of some equipment for broadcasting, and they asked for the possibility to broadcast legally, but since it was very shortly after the Velvet Revolution, there wasn't a law that would enable to start a radio station, so they started, after not being able to obtain a license, they started illegally. This was 1990, and they seized the equipment after a few days, and there was a lot of media pressure and some petitions and stuff. So after some time they got the license and started legally.
Who were the founders? Who were the young people who began Radio 1?
Well, part of them are still part of the team. So it was, for instance, Ondřej Štindl, who's a Czech journalist, writer, and still a radio DJ. He still has a show there. And his father was the one who got the broadcasting equipment for the Czechs. And then it was Lenka Wienerová, who's currently a director of Radio 1. And their friends, mostly students, and their friends who would borrow their records and cassettes, etc.
That's one thing that's very striking in the book, is how the DJs and presenters didn't have like a library of music in the station. They brought in their own stuff, or they borrowed stuff.
Yeah, and even I think it's kind of funny that Aaron Kurtz, who's an American who played hip-hop, and at that time there was no chance to get that stuff here. So his father would send him either CDs or recordings of Aaron's own broadcasts from a student radio that he did back in America. And so he was like replaying the songs from that tapes from his own show.
He was DJ A to the K.
Yeah.
Radio 1 began as Radio Stalin. Is that correct? Because it's such a big part of the kind of myth of Radio 1 now, right?
Yeah, because Radio Stalin was chosen as a name because the first place where it started broadcasting was in the underground part of the Stalin monument in Prague. At the time there was no more statue, but it was still known as Stalin, so it was a sort of making fun of it.
And there was a very big space under where the statue was, and it was used like for storing potatoes and stuff.
Yeah,
like
it was a huge space used for some gardening storage and some fertilizers and stuff. So it was terrible condition, and somebody just started an art project in there, like exhibition of international artists, pretty much punk stuff. And the people knew the people with the equipment, so they sort of enabled them to start broadcasting from there.
And did I understand it right in the book? The station was actually operating as Radio Stalin for only 1 week?
Yeah, sort of for a few days actually. And after it got a license, it got a new name, which was Radio Ultra. It was like something that should have meant something like ultra good, ultra energetic, ultra something. But since that time was full of politics, people were asked like, ultra what? Ultra left, ultra right? What are you? And they didn't want any politic stuff. So they found a new name, which was Radio 1, Radio Jedna.
It seems like the early days of Radio Jedna were quite anarchic. What are some of the craziest stories connected with the beginnings of the station?
Well, the start itself was anarchic because, like pirate station is anarchy in its purest form. But I think the first few years were very much a party in the studio. Even if there was a person who was supposed to DJ, it didn't mean that that one person would be the only one, because like a friend came along and I was like, maybe I can drop in and I can broadcast with my friend. Or there were people from bands who, for instance, it's like one of my favorite things, because at first it didn't seem strange to me when my colleague said that, but then I was like, well, it's not really usual. Somebody banged the door of Radio 1 and my colleague went to open, and there were some unknown people, and they said they are from a band, somewhere from Belgium, some punk band. And they heard that it's possible to sleep somewhere on the floor at the radio, because they didn't have any booking for a hotel or something. And he was like, yeah, you can use this just, in the office, just sleep on the floor, and in the morning just, tell the DJ we are going. So they just slept there, and in the morning they left. And when he first said this to me, because I remember those days, I was like, okay, where's the big plot? And after that I was like, can you imagine now, like a bunch of unknown people come to a radio, we want to sleep here. And at that time it was just the most normal thing.
Also in the book, some of the interviewees talk about when the station was broadcasting from their now, I guess, legendary rock club Bunker, that they would arrive like in the morning and the place would still stink from the night before of smoke and beer and people.
Yeah, you were like sticking to the floor. You can imagine what a club that was full of people drinking, smoking the whole night, what it looks like in the morning. So this was like the first thing you encountered when you went to radio. But it was also very useful at night, because DJs would play in the club and just borrow CDs from the radio, or we would interview bands who would come for the concerts.
I have to say, I listened to Radio Jedna a lot in those days. I didn't have anything except a radio on which I listened to BBC World Service and non-stop Radio Jedna. And for me, it was better than any music station that I knew from Ireland or the UK. But for people who don't remember those times, what kind of music would people have heard on Radio Jedna in, let's say, when you started in 93?
Well, when I started, it was lots of alternative guitar rock, like Sonic Youth, for instance, or some, now they are called slowcore bands like Codeine or something. Some hip-hop, some early hip-hop, some techno, like more of, Sheffield stuff or something, not techno as in commercial. Also other genres such as, rock in opposition, even classical music was there. It was, and it still is, about what the DJ chooses, what they want to play. But I was really surprised when I found out that there are no stations like that in the other countries, because for me, because I loved English music and I thought that England must be full of stuff like that. And Radio 1, even if it is just a chance name, it wasn't chosen because of Radio 1. I was thinking that what John Peel does was what normally Radio On plays. And when I first came to England, I opened Radio On in the car, and I was expecting that, and I knew the frequency, and I was like, now I will listen to. And there was Hathaway, I still remember Hathaway, because it was a big summer hit at that time. I was like, no, I must have, mistaken the numbers. And then I found that what we do and what we did during the day, they do in the specialist shows in the evening, but not during the day.
Also a big thing on Radio Jedna for many people were the jingles.
Yeah.
Who created them, or how come they were such a big hit, do you think?
Well, they defy what the jingles are supposed to be, because normally jingles are 15 seconds long, and we have a jingle that is 5 minutes. And very often they were created by Ondřej Ježek and Ondřej Štindl. And most of them were improvisations.
I used to know a guy who was a Radio Jedna DJ, and of any people I know, he spoke so badly and mumbled that I couldn't understand a word that he said. He's the hardest of all Czech people. I still know him a little bit. He's the hardest to understand. And you say in the book that many of the presenters didn't have perfect voices, or they even had speech defects.
Yeah, I mean, most of us do have some sort of speech defects. And even if we don't have official speech defects, we usually don't speak that radio voices like normal radio DJs do. And they were trying to teach us. They hired an actress who would try to teach us that, but it ended up really badly.
And when did Radio Jedna start becoming more professional, or more like a normal commercial radio station?
Well, we sort of aren't professional yet, but I think after about 5 or 6 years, it started to resemble a normal radio station. And the first advertisements came a few years after we started, and we really needed the money. And there was quite a lot of backlash at that time, because the other radios mostly didn't exist yet. So having advertisement on air was unheard of, because there was the state radio that didn't have any, and now there was somebody who would tell people, go buy this yogurt, but it saved us because it brought us money that we needed.
Doing this book, was there anything you feel that you learned about the station?
Well, lots of little details from the first days, because I wasn't a part of the very first team. So some details like about people, meeting and just speaking lots of nonsense, and then it was crystallized some great ideas. So I think there wasn't any huge surprise, but lots of small details, and also it's really nice to see how people love the radio, and also the people who are not DJs but are somehow part of the bunch. They feel so strongly about it.
Reading the book, I remember that I myself was on Radio Jedna in, I think, 1994. There was a little section in English every morning around 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the woman who presented it. And she had me on talking about St. Patrick's Day. And that must have been my first time ever on the radio. And I completely forgot it until I saw a mention of the fact that the station was briefly at Vitong.
Yeah.
And I thought, yes, I'd be. And otherwise I'd completely forgotten about it.
I think there's an Irish pub in there now.
Really? Well, maybe that's fitting.
Yeah.
You've been associated with the station for 30 years. What did you get from the experience of putting this book together and speaking to all your old colleagues and people even you didn't know maybe so much?
Makes me appreciate it even more, because it made me see how big and how beautiful the whole thing is. I mean, for me it's sort of a privilege to be a part of it, but when you speak to people and all of them say how important it is for them and maybe how it helped them, it was great to see how this works.
Thanks very much indeed to Jana Kománková for speaking to me and for putting together such an illuminating book as Radio Jedna, Life in the Ether. This has been episode 83 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. so it goes without saying there are scores more out there for you to enjoy. Check some out and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. But for now, that's all from me, Ian Willoughby. Thank you so much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.